G'day guys. This is about TMAO. As you've known, from the veganerized community and many other, could say what do we say? The sort of general plant-based world, researchers which are proliferating faster than mushrooming, faster than mushrooms or carbon. But anyway, that sort of crowd that tends to love associations and loves to demonize animal foods. Anyway, let's take a close look at some of the genetics and some of the research behind TMAO. Let's do a deep dive, so to speak, and take a close look. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so this is the sort of stuff you get on the British medical, sort of the cardiovascular disorders. If you take a look at anything in the literature, there's all this sort of stuff. TMAO levels, and is a potential, obviously they can't claim cause and effect because they haven't proven it, a potential biomarker of cardiovascular disease. Yes, another associated relationship. TMAO is a circulating biomarker associated with cardiovascular disease. Production of TMAO is facilitated by gut microbiota and dependent on micronutrients such as choline, betaine, and L-carnitine, present in such wonderful foods as red meat and eggs. So let's demonize all the key animal foods, steak and eggs, basically. I don't need to even touch on some of this sort of stuff, how nonsensical it is. Obviously, TMA is produced by the gut bacteria, and then it's converted by the liver by an enzyme into TMAO. Okay? So, phosphatidylcholine, is a chemical compound in eggs. Well, soybean, mustard, flour, and other things. Well, it's very tiny in those. It's in as lecithin, and it's not as good in terms of bioavailability. So really, eggs and animal foods are much higher in choline. Found naturally in the body of all cells, phosphatidylcholine is also a source of choline in the body and is used for ulcerative colitis. There is some scientific research that supports this use. There's also been some clinical research. This is off WebMD, which is one of the stock standards approved by our dear friends at Google, because it's, the run-of-the-mill, they're even saying it, because there's plenty of research showing that it has, and at the same time they go, oh, this choline stuff in the gut, we don't want it. Hold on. It's actually helping with ulcerative colitis, but we don't want it because it creates TMAO. It could affect the heart, is the concept. So it's a double-edged sword, according to them. Okay? So that's what and there's a hypothesis, and at least they're being honest that it is a damn hypothesis because it's still unproven. The veganerized community go out there banging on their drums continuously saying, oh, this is proven. No, it's not. It's a hypothesis. We sought to predict TMAO quarterly levels amongst healthy individuals at increased risk of CVD using clinical data via an ordinary logical model. Well, if somebody's eating, a plant-based diet, they're going to be eating less eggs and less meat and producing that. But those other people that are actually eating a mixed diet, the sad dieters, they may eat a bit more foods that generate this TMAO, but it's associated. They're eating also a whole lot of others, refined sugars, seed oils, and you name it. So, that's why it's associated. Association is not causation. It's like ice cream sales and shark attacks on Miami Beach. They're associated, very highly associated, even have a better association even than this hypothesis, but it's still not causal one of the other. Yes. Yes, those damn ice creams that can be really bad for your health. You may have a bit of meat bitten out of you, apparently. Yes, it's a very strong association. So we're not going to go. This is just another one of those ridiculous studies trying to make out, the normal demonstrated predictive association. Yes, yeah. Well, association is not causation, just more junk, And even I think Susan M. Smith, she's sort of leaning towards the plant-based community. And I think this Randall guy as well, I've seen him before in that. So, Randall Harris. So I don't really, there's just, it's part of that group that I just really love epidemiology, as Bart Kay would say, junk science, junk associations. Anyway, so there you go. Even the officialdom tell you that you should be using choline for your ulcerative colitis. There you go. Even the official stuff is pointing in that direction. Now, let's take a look at some of these things. Now, this is a genetic disorder where there's a bit of an issue, trimethylnuria, which gives you that fish odor. So if you're consuming foods like choline and that, and you get a fish odor, you've definitely got these genes. So what actually happens is, if people have these, when they have this, the TMA gets excreted. Doesn't even go to the liver, gets excreted. And that's why they get that fishy, it goes to their skin, they pee it out, and they get that fishy urine smell and stuff like that. Breath and sweat is that thing, but it means basically that TMA does not go to the liver to get converted to TMAO, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Otherwise, so individuals excrete that instead of TMAO. Okay? So that's the difference if you've got those genetics in that regard. Here's this enzyme. This is the key enzyme. This enzyme is the one that actually converts TMA, the thing that's actually the metabolite that's produced from choline inside the gut by the gut microbiome, produces this one. And this one will give you that fishy smell. And this one goes to the liver, and the liver converts it with this enzyme here, MFO3 enzyme. And that gets converted to TMAO. Okay? So these, I'll put these links up. Pretty much they're interchangeable, as you can see there, that one, and there it is again, which 3 is the key one. These other two are sort of varied. I'm not looking at those so much. I look at these 2 key ones. So if we look at this one is also related back to cytochrome P450, which is the key methylate, with the key detoxifying, enzymatic element in your liver. So as you can see within the population group, Northern Europeans tend to have this slightly reduced. It's not pathogenic or anything like that if you have reduced. It just means that, the effect with the TMAO, sort of the TMA. So if you've got that, about 14.2% of Europeans and Northern Europeans will have this problem. And down in Italy, it's about 11.8, which is sort of similar, would be to like Greece and places like that. So these are the sort of things. Chinese tend to have it higher. So the Han Chinese, 35%, and the other one, the worst type. So the 7.3%, they would be very fishy in their smell. So yes. Anyway, So if I look, so the common one, which makes you non-fishy, and you convert TMA to TMAO in the liver. So if I look at mine, go to my 23andMe raw data check, and I'm GG, and GG is the common one. Okay, so I'm not fishy. There you go. There you know. So now the key one. This is the key one. This is the key one which determines that genetic, whether you will smell or not. So that's the common one, and these are that. So if we look at down here, pathogenic. Okay, so this is the one. So you definitely want to be, for this one, you don't want to be homozygous, and you don't, and you don't want to have this sort of polymorphism. Anyway, so we want the common alleles of GG. Let's see what your lad Harry is like. Ibsen. It is a GG. So pretty much I'm fine with that gene. So I definitely convert TMA to TMAO, and I don't smell fishy. There you go. So you don't have to worry about your cat going crazy around me. Anyway, now back to that. So there are 2 studies off that, just explaining all that sort of stuff. There's this one here, and let's go to the top. So TMAO, the good, the bad, and the unknown. Well, there's a lot of unknowns here. I wonder why there's so much of these associated studies. Why doesn't anyone do any, sort of clinical studies, any proper controlled, to see what happens? I wonder why. Probably not good for business. It'll break the model, the Wagonerized model, and the food industry model, and everything else. Anyway, TMAO is formed from TMA, which is generated by the action of the gut microbiota from dietary choline and phosphatidylcholine, lecithin, and described another pathway involved the catabolism of L-carnitine through 2 subsequential microbial reactions. Those little buggers. Okay, so pretty much animal foods, red meat, eggs, dairy products, salt water fish, which have the highest of these things, the highest TMAO levels. So you don't only just get the choline and a few of the other things, you're always getting also high TMAO. You'll find out why the fish have such high TMAO shortly. So yes, so pretty much all that sort of stuff that actually, I mean, carnitine is very important for the human body as well. So not only choline and stuff like that. I've done a video exporting fat out of the liver, fatty liver. Choline and methionine play a big role in that sort of department. So if you're deficient in those 2, you're going to have fatty liver. So an animal-based diet protects you against fatty liver. So let's see if it protects you against fatty liver, protects you against all these other things, like ulcerative colitis and things like that, but causes cardiovascular disease. Doesn't really. Let's just check that thing. That hypothesis. So that's that part. I'm not going to go into, that's not the purpose of this study. This one just covers the sort of the issue with the fishiness, those genetics. It just describes that it gives you a fishy odor. So, and TMAO does not smell. So if you can convert it to TMA to TMAO, rather than excreting it and getting a fishy smell, you won't get the smell. And so some TMAO will get excreted out of the kidneys and all that. And some of it will, as it circulates before it gets excreted, what does it do? Because this is the whole thing. Everybody thinks that it's really, really nasty and all that. So what does it do? That's the other thing here, just to give you an idea on this conversion. Products such as, so what do we need to convert TMA? We need riboflavin. So riboflavin is the key thing that actually does the conversion. So you don't get the TMA in the bloodstream, and that's important, and I'll explain shortly. So in that regard, so let's look at some of the good research. Oh, there is good research actually. TMA, a seafood derived molecule, produces diuresis and reduces mortality in heart failure rats. Surprise, surprise. So it's not heart damaging. That's associated nonsense. It's heart protective. This is actual mechanistic studies looking at exactly what does it do. You create an animal model with a heart failure, and then you see by putting in a certain different quantities of TMAO, what happens. Okay? Diuresis is basically urination, water out, which is going to lower. So any diuresis is going to lower blood pressure. Okay? So obviously, this isn't done in the US because they don't do studies like that in the US. They just do crackpot studies by Wagnerized academics. Poland, obviously, a country with a very good, long, old history in education. When you go right back, Polish academics, Russian, Polish, Hungarian, Austrian, German academics did a lot of the early research. Americans were nowhere to be seen. It was only after the Second World War where a lot of these academics from these countries left and went to the US, and it filled up the academia in the US that America actually acquired some brains from Europe. That was the brain drain that happened after the Second World War. I won't go into that. Anybody can research it and look into it. So anyway, let's take a look. So they're actually looking at TMAO is present in seafood, which is considered to be beneficial for health. Deep water animals accumulate TMAO to protect proteins. Surprise, surprise. Who would have guessed? Such as lactate dehydrogenase. Now, that's an enzyme that can actually convert lactate back to pyruvate and vice versa. Okay, recycling in that regard. Just keeping that in mind. I'm not going to go into the details. Anybody can go and do their own biochemistry info on that. Against hydrostatic pressure, stress lowers the pressure. Yes, yes. Very good for a heart that's under, has injury. We hypothesize that TMAO exerts beneficial effects on their circulatory system. I just choked on a piece of imaginary broccoli. Who could have believed it? And protects the cardiac. Oh God, I'm shocked. From lactate exposed to hydrostatic pressure, basically to blood pressure produced by the contracting heart. So yes, so TMAO is really, really heart protective under high blood pressure and lowers blood pressure. Got it? It's actually protective of the heart, not damaging, and it's a natural diuretic. So no wonder the Japanese have lower blood pressure, even though they're eating a mixed diet, because of the high TMAO that they're consuming. Got it? Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It always is when you start looking at this carefully. We're treated orally either, we won't go into that, how they did the stuff. We'll look at the stuff further down. Anyway, heart failure is a common cause of death in industrialized countries with aging population. It's with, we know the Maasai live and they can outrun, like an 80-year-old outrun a Mary Ruddock up a hillside. Nah, it's basically the seed oils and the refined sugars and all the crap that we consume that are basically aging us fast and furious. Anyway, Japan, however, has a lower rate of heart failure and fewer deaths linked to this disease than United States or Europe. I wonder what's helping them. Could it be that nasty TMAO? It can't be. There goes the world for the vagoonerized community. Oh, you know. Sorry, vagoons. Despite having the highest proportion of elderly people in the world, dietary differences between regions, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the Japanese diet is rich in seafood. We know they're basically fishing every ocean of the planet, and even hitting every single commercial farm for seafood. Anyway, which contains reasons to promote heart health, such as omega-3s, fatty acids. Well, yeah, we've seen a lot of research looking at omega-3s as heart protective, and the reality is all those studies have not really panned out exactly as they thought. I'm not saying that essential fatty acids don't have a role, yes, but I think they're playing different roles in the brain and elsewhere, in the eyes, DHA, stuff like that, than exactly the heart protective thing that they've been touted for so many studies that really failed. I think the TMAO is the big player. That's why when you do, in the US, amongst people with heart disease, omega-3 fatty acid studies, they failed to prove, there's not much difference between the control because their diet is deficient in TMAO. They don't eat enough fish. They get a bit of TMAO compared to the vagoons, but they're getting a whole lot of seed oils and they're getting a lot of other crap that's causing massive inflammation in most of the SAD dieters. So the small amount of TMAO is insignificant to do enough for them. Being on an ancestral diet plus eating foods that are higher in choline or have direct TMAO in their flesh from the fish themselves, those sort of animal foods are going to be heart protective. Seafood also contains a component including TMAO. Okay, fish that live in deep water undergo high pressures. Got it? High pressure, high blood pressure, think. And we're talking about even higher in these sort of cases. Yes, no wonder the Japanese have very good blood pressure levels compared to the rest of the world, and we wonder why. Could it be our dear friend TMAO? Yes. And then they go down here and they actually say, this is the sort of the general. I'll read this out because it's important to read the sort of general thinking out there that exists. Seafood also contains other components, including TMAO. Fish that live in deep water undergo high pressure, which can damage their proteins. But TMAO seems to protect the proteins from the harm. In humans, eating seafood increases TMAO levels in the blood and urine, but it is unclear what effect this has on the heart health. Yeah, lower blood pressure. I wonder what that does for the human heart. Seems to do wonders for the animal hearts, for all the other animals. I wonder. There's a whole industry out there with blood pressure meds. Maybe people should be just supplementing TMAO rather than contraindicated stuff that's got a lot of side effects. I wonder. Bagoons, did you hear that? Supplement TMAO and don't listen to your crackpot gurus. So, increased levels of TMAO in the blood are associated with cardiovascular disease. Associated, yes, we know, associated. But scientists are not sure whether TMAO itself harms the heart. Obviously, because they haven't proven anything yet. It's just associated. There's no mechanism being proven. A toxic byproduct of gut bacteria called TMA. That means if you've got that other gene, remember that I don't, a small percentage of the population, they just dump it out, the TMA, they excrete it, as we saw earlier, but you get a smelly, fishy aroma. Anyway, you know who you are. And so they were not going to get any TMAO. Maybe they should be supplementing TMAO or eating more fish, because then they can get TMAO for their blood pressure and lowering and heart protective effects. And it says the toxic byproduct of gut bacteria called TMA is converted to TMAO in the body, actually in the liver, by FMO3, which is that enzyme. So is it possible that TMA rather than TMAO is to blame? Idle speculation. We don't know. First of all, it's associated. I don't believe either is related. Either. But if you consume more riboflavin, you'll convert the TMA if you're concerned. Look, just 100 beef gives you 66%, 100 grams, 6-ounce steak, you get over 100%, no problems. That's fortified, so that's crap. Milk's another good source. A 16-ounce glass has got 69%. Raw milk has, and this is the low fat, raw milk has got more. Yogurt's got stuff. Salmon's is the other one. Porky is fantastic for that as well. We can forget about that crap. Avocado, a bit more bioavailable, but doesn't have a lot for those low carbers. And eggs, fantastic. 6 eggs. 5 eggs will give you 100%. I usually have 6 eggs. I even had 6 eggs earlier. So pretty much, as you can see, it's mostly animal foods that have, including choline as well, we know. So I've covered that in another video. We won't go into that. So as you can see, riboflavin, very important for this enzyme to convert TMA to TMAO. Okay, got it? And they're actually saying here, if that's the problem, well, just eat more animal foods. You'll get plenty of riboflavin, because you won't get it in many on most of the other foods, very little in most plant foods. So if you want a lot of, converting, because that enzyme requires riboflavin, the more, and riboflavin is required for a whole lot of other functions in the body, including for methylation and many other things. So, you need to consume more to be able to support this as well. So if this is a problem, which hasn't been proven either, then riboflavin, eating more animal foods, will be protective. Got it? Now, if we go all the way down and we look, I'm not going to go through that. They've actually done the tests here looking at, okay, so people can check that on their own. This is the water. That's the control. That's the TMAO. As you can see, more damage, less damage. And the TMAO group had quite a lot. If you see all the other stuff like body mass and all that, the p-values are not very high. But when we're looking at the TMAO, plasma levels and the urine excretion levels, 0.001. So we know that the numbers are really solid. The probability that these weren't measured properly, unlikely. So with that sort of p-value. So as you can see, there's significant more that's being urinated out compared to the control. Okay, heart mass is slightly better with a TMAO group as well. And you can see blood pressure compared to the control. Again, same thing. So again, values here. And they've looked at the different groups. See, and the fibrosis is down. In terms of cardiomyocytes as well. It's not much difference with them. Where's the other one? Well, they're just saying here that our study provides evidence that TMAO exerts beneficial effects in the heart failure rats, beneficial effects of TMAO is associated with the diuretic and natriuretic and hypotensive, lower blood pressure, rather than the stability effect of the cardiac. So what it seems to be doing is it's lowering blood pressure, it's getting rid, and that's how it's helping in that regard. So, it's not nothing magical. We're not talking about anything magical here. The key thing that they've noticed is the lowering of the blood pressure. Now, where's the other one? So this is all the lab stuff, how they did the actual testing. So if people want to check that, that's about halfway down for the lab stuff. If anybody wants to look at that. Must be for. Yeah. And you can see the blood pressure difference. Between the control. Go away. I thought that was actually, yeah. And still, the diastolic has got a better p-value. So that's pretty much it, guys, in that regard. So really what TMAO is actually doing as a metabolite, it's lowering blood pressure. It's excreting excess fluids, and it's sort of regulating. It has an effect on lowering the blood pressure, reducing water retention and stuff like that. So that's its benefit. Now, it sort of explains why, of the lower blood pressure levels in Japan. And we know that blood pressure is definitely a problem when it comes to endothelial dysfunction and cardiac problems. And also pressure in other, like high pressure can actually cause other damage in other organs. So we know it does have an effect, and lowering blood pressure is important. The problem is that we can either do it with drugs, which have a lot of side effects and are like a blunt instrument, or we can use animal foods, generate our own TMAO. Those who have that genetic, where, they may consider, consuming a bit more fish. So they get actual TMAO and they don't have to, because they can't convert it. So they get less fishiness, and also at the same time, they get a bit more, of the benefits of the fish lowering their blood pressure and stuff like that. So that's how I sort of see it in that regard. There's different amounts of people around the world that have the different sort of genetic combinations, but it's just basically to give you an idea that all the stuff that's been talked about TMAO is associated. And here we've got actual real researchers actually showing what it does in fish. That's been established really well in the science literature, that TMAO reduces pressure within the fish. We just haven't established it in humans, but we've actually established it in an animal model here, which is pretty much a rat model. But we do know that Japanese have lower blood pressure than any other population around the world. And it was always a question, why do they have this low? I suspect it's TMAO that's actually reducing their blood pressure levels. I think that's the real reason behind it. So, and it may explain some other things as well, because very low blood pressure is also slightly associated with things like, like when you have really, really low blood pressure, it's sort of, there is a bit of an association with strokes, certain types of strokes. And there is a high propensity for those things in Japan, and they do consume a lot of fish. It's not something we recommend, me and Bart, on a carnivore diet. I don't. I say a bit of fish. Bart says pretty much next to nothing. I'm a bit more liberal when it comes to the actual fish side. I think a bit more, especially in our environment that we are. We need a bit more DHA because of the high level of loss of DHA due to blue light exposure. So that's the reason why it's a sort of, we're living in a different environment, in a tech environment with exposures that we wouldn't have had ancestrally. So we may need a bit more compared to what our ancestors required. So that's just my differentiation on that specific issue. But this is basically it, guys. So next time you see your veganerized friend, tell them or shoot them this video link. They may not enjoy my humor, but at least they'll enjoy the science, and it may help them improve their health. Maybe, if they can get out of their brainwashed ideology. Anyway, that's it. See yous.